Hello, and welcome to this old dollhouse. So, my daughter has a real fun collection that she likes called LOL Surprise Dolls. And they didn't have a dollhouse for these dolls for the longest time. They do now. So, I decided to build her a dollhouse. And we didn't want to do it out of wood because I wanted her to be able to participate and help work on the dollhouse. So, what we've done is we've constructed a dollhouse basically out of crafting sticks, old CD cases for the windows, and foam core. A bunch of other items inside that I did pick up at a dollar store. So this video is just basically a little bit of our process on how we built the house. My daughter loves this thing. I made it into a 3-story dollhouse, something that she could take apart and play with, and it doesn't weigh more than a couple of pounds. It's very light, which was one of the main goals I had. So here we go. Let's get into the design part. So essentially what I wanted to do is I wanted to build a dollhouse that was big enough that she would have some rooms where the dolls could actually fit and she could play in a couple of different areas. So I wanted a kitchen, a bathroom, a couple bedrooms, things like that. And then I ended up adding on a deck on the second floor, which you'll see when we get to that point on the video as well. The whole project took us, I want to say, probably about a month or so, because we worked on it a little bit here and a little bit there because, as you know, sometimes working with kids, they don't have a lot of attention span, and so we worked until she was tired of working and we moved on. So at this point, basically, I'm drawing a template for the floor, figuring out basically how big this house is going to be in total. And then I started cutting some foam core strips just so I can get a feel for how tall the walls were going to be. And so this is me just making some strips out of the foam core board. Everything in this video I picked up at a dollar store in my city here. The budget for the build was very, very low. And that was just because we wanted something. I wasn't sure how long this house was going to be used, and I just wanted something that she could also help me build. So like I said, that's why I skipped using materials like MDF and lumber, because I didn't want her operating around saws and things like that. So I made myself a rough cutting template for the walls, and then basically I took them, wanted them all to be the same height, so I measured an LOL Surprise doll, and it went a little bit taller than that, just so that I could make sure that the dolls' heads wouldn't get stuck on the floor, the floor above it. So basically, the doll house has about the same clearance that a normal person's house would have for their head, and that allows my daughter to get her hand into the dollhouse and play with the dolls. And also gives her enough room so she can move furniture around and things like that. So I designed the front of the house so it would have a bit of a porch because I just thought that'd be a nice feature for her to have. So she'll have a nice front door and an area where the dolls can kind of come in, and then she can pretend to have them sort of arriving in the house. I also wanted to make sure she had room at the back of the house, so I put in a bit of stairs so that dolls can go up and down the stairs and things like that. There was a lot of measuring and cutting involved. So at this point in the build, I've made a little template out of some spare foam core, and I'm cutting out spaces for windows on the walls. And I came up with an old trick that I used to use from way back in the day. And what I did is I took some old jewel cases, some old CD jewel cases, and I measured out that square that you saw, and I cut the jewel cases into the window sizes that I was looking to make, and that allowed me to put a little bit of a glass into the windows without using actual plexiglass or actual glass. And these are CD cases I had just laying around, so they weren't currently being used. I just basically cleaned them up with a little bit of Windex to get them nice and sort of clear, and then once I had cut the holes into the foam core, what I did is I went about and I inserted the plastic on the inside of the wall to allow the window to give the wall a bit of strength, and also to sort of hide the cut that I was going to make, because I was planning on covering that area with crafting sticks anyway. So basically, you're not going to see the overhanging pieces of plastic on the windows at all. So I sort of did an assembly line style. I basically cut out all of the templates for all the windows, cleaned up all of the cuts. You might, make sure that you're changing out your blade every now and then, because sometimes the blade itself, if it's too dull, it's not going to actually cut. It's going to just tear the paper, and then you'll end up with a bit of a messy looking project. So once I had those cut, I wanted to basically start the process of putting the house together. That's why it says it's the best day ever, because my daughter was so excited when she saw the actual house itself coming together. I think that for her, it went from being just a drawing on some foam core and a bunch of cut pieces of foam core into being an actual house. And so we just broke out the old hot glue gun and started basically putting up walls. I had drawn a floor plan onto the foam core. So what I'm working on right here is I'm working on the first floor, and you'll see I'm showing my daughter basically what we're going to be building. I've glued that first wall into place, and I'm moving it around to make sure it's all going to stay put. I've also at this point started the process of putting in the windows because I wanted to make sure that actually would work out before I got too involved in the actual build itself. So at this point, it's starting to look a bit like a house. What I had opted to do, and this is probably something I would do differently if I was to build again, was to do a long wall on the inside of the house, and then I had cut some door spaces into there as well. The beauty of working with the foam core is that it doesn't weigh anything, so moving the house around, it was super easy to move things around, and if I dropped it, it wouldn't hurt my toes. So I'm not being too technical. I'm basically eyeballing some of these cuts before I make them, making my line with a pencil, and then just taking a ruler and just making a quick cut. So what I'm doing at this point in the build is I'm basically cutting out door templates into the interior walls that I'm going to be putting inside of her house. And so later on, what I did is I manufactured some doors out of just some crafting wood that I picked up, and I just cut it with my Dremel tool. Again, I used the same template to make sure the doors are the right size. Um, it worked out really well. I find that once I started putting in the walls with the doors, the excitement level really started to build. My daughter could see her house kind of coming together at this point. As you can see, one of the hazards of doing a build like this is that the girls were very anticipating being able to play with the house right away, and so there were Barbie dolls constantly being thrown into the mix, as well as LOL surprise dolls. So I was hurrying to get this bottom floor sort of assembled so they can go and play with that while I worked on the next floor. But yeah, you can see right there that they're very anticipating me getting this thing put together. And so essentially, this is how the first floor went. I didn't record the building of the entire house, unfortunately. We just were recording over such a long period of time. And I found that I was doing a lot of the building with her, not necessarily in my studio. But at the end of the day, we ended up with a really lovely looking little dollhouse. Anyways, take care. Hope you enjoyed the video. So long for now.